correctly. Hello, welcome to a summary of physician-assisted legislation. I'm Gene Ransom, the CEO of MedChi, and I'm here today with Steve Wise with the law firm of Schwartz Metz Wise. Schwartz Metz Wise has been MedChi's lobbyist for 29 years this year, actually, and I guess the upcoming year will make it 30, and even 30. And Steve has been a partner with them for quite some time. He was the principal lawyer who worked on this legislation, and they do a great job for us. So we really appreciate them. Steve, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Gene. Appreciate the chance to kind of simplify this somewhat complicated bill.
Yeah, so the physician assistants have been in asking for legislation for several years actually, and we started out opposed to it. But maybe it'd be helpful if you started by just giving everybody a little background on the legislation.
Sure. The bill passed this past session, the 2024 legislative session, but it really began back in the 2022 session. They put in a bill. We were asked to sit down with the physician assistants, which we did, but it was clear at that time there was too much to tackle in one session. So we were charged with trying to work things out over the interim between 2022 and 2023. And to that end, MedChi put together a working group of physicians, and I think they deserve mentioning here because they put in a lot of hours. Dr. York, MedChi past president, represented the orthopedic surgeons. Dr. Mike Niehoff represented the family physicians. Dr. Ma represented the radiologists. Dr. Doug Mitchell, who's with Advenitis Health, and then Dr. Silverman with the emergency docs, along with Dr. Lowentritt, who is our current president. They participated in probably a dozen meetings with me, some directly with the physician assistants during that time frame, trying to work things out. And then getting back to the time frame, the 2023 session, the bill was introduced, but yet again, we still just had too many things that weren't resolved. But heading into the 2023 interim, the legislative leadership said, look, a bill is passing in 2024. It's incumbent upon you guys to come back with things worked out, or we're going to work it out for you. So we went back to work, and really right through the up until the last few weeks of the 2024 session, we still had a few outstanding issues, but we were able to get those resolved with the legislators weighing in, and that resulted in the product that we now have.
And I guess the biggest first takeaway for physicians is that it does not allow for independent practice, which a lot of other states have gotten, closer to over time. So that's a nice win. And I guess maybe it'd be helpful if you don't mind going through what it does do then, what changes have actually occurred.
Sure. And you're right about that. I mean, up until this bill passed, Maryland had a supervisory relationship between physicians and physician assistants, while other states have moved to independent practice. We took a much smaller step in going from supervision to collaboration, and we preserved what used to be called the delegation agreement is now going to be called a collaboration agreement. But really, it serves the same purpose, which is making sure the relationship between the physician and the physician assistant, or group of physicians and physician assistants, is spelled out. So everybody knows exactly what the PA can do under what circumstances and so forth. And it really gives the doctor the ability to tailor the agreement to the experience level and the confidence that they have in particular physician assistants. But that work group that I mentioned really set up three guardrails that kind of were the guiding light as we went through these negotiations, and those are actually stated in the bill, and they are that The PA's practice has to be appropriate to their education, training, and experience. That it has to be customary to the practice of the physician. So one of our big concerns was that a physician assistant who may have experience in a certain specialty, but for example, comes to work in a family practice, the physician assistant started out wanting that PA to be able to do those specialized tasks, despite the fact that they were no longer in a practice with that specialty. They wanted to be able to bring that, for example, to the family practice. And we said no, because that means they're doing things that the physician is not familiar with necessarily. So that customary to the practice of the physician was a very important guardrail. And the third one was that the PA's practice has to be consistent with the collaboration agreement. So again, it all ties back to the agreement and what the physician or physicians have agreed to allow the PA to do.
And I think the PA's also got a little bit of a win because instead of it being a delegation agreement, it's now a collaboration agreement, which was something they really wanted. Can you talk a little bit about that advanced duties issue? Because that was a big issue and it came up. I know in the hearings there was talk about the Baltimore Sun article about the issue with the PAs and the physician in the city with the urology practice. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that works under the statute?
Yeah, the law has always envisioned that there are core duties that a PA can perform, and those really are the basic duties that somebody presumably coming out of school could perform. But the law over the years brought in the concept of advanced duties, and these were things that required some experience and maybe were more specialized to a particular specialty that the PA was working in. And as those first came about, they all had to be approved of by the Board of Physicians, and it was quite a lengthy process. A number of years ago, certain facilities where the PA might be practicing were made exempt from that, like hospitals, for example, where you had other checks and balances in place, risk management, accreditation, credentialing, and those types of things. But the PAs continue to say that that process of approval at the Board of Physicians was very lengthy and time consuming, and it kept them from practicing at the full extent of their skills. And we didn't disagree with that. So the process for advanced duties, we exempted out an additional type of facility for federally qualified health centers. But the board also agreed that PAs who have previously performed these advanced duties shouldn't have to go through an approval process again just because they changed practice setting. That maybe they moved from one practice to another. Once they've been approved, they can continue to perform that advanced duty, all of course subject to those three guardrails that we mentioned before. Still has to be customary to the practice for them to do it. And the board will still continue to produce a list of advanced duties that they consider to require their approval. If you are in one of the exempt facilities, you don't have to go to the board. But if you're not in one of those facilities, particularly in like a small practice, and you're trying to get approved for advanced duty for the first time, you do still have to go and get Board of Physicians approval. And we thought that was an appropriate check and balance on not allowing PAs to do things that they can't show to an independent body some level of qualification and expertise in.
So I think one of the things I would just want to point out, MedChi has a good relationship over the years with the PA Society, and even when we have a good relationship, but obviously at times we'll have disagreements. But when we got to the end and did the work and put the time in, we really came up with something here that has reasonable protections for physicians and patients, but it also does streamline things a little bit for the PAs. One of the other things we did with this legislation was we had a couple issues that really affected physicians, maybe more so than PAs. a tort issue and a dispensing issue, and we were able to get that into this legislation with your artful help. Can you talk a little bit about those two issues that were kind of added on by MedChi as things we wanted as part of the deal?
Sure. There was as to the dispensing issue, there was a little bit of confusion as to what PAs could do and what they couldn't do, even under the prior law. But this bill comes in and cleans some of that up. Um, and most importantly, the bill allows the physician to delegate all acts of dispensing to the PA. Again, they don't have to. This would be spelled out in the collaboration agreement. But if they're confident in that PA, the old process of the physician having to come back and do the final check, that can also be delegated to the PA now.
And that
But
was
again,
obviously a really big deal for urgent care centers and
right,
for a lot of our pain and orthopedic practices that do dispense
correct.
as part of the holistic treatment they provide. So that getting that fixed was just really good for those physician practices.
Right. It's a very small segment of the number of licensed physicians who actually do dispensing, but for those that do it, it's an important part of their practice, and this I really think helps with efficiency there. And then on the capital non-economic damages, this is one of those things that really gets into the weeds of the law, but it's very important, particularly in hospitals and really any practice that uses physician assistants. Maryland has a cap on what are called non-economic damages, and those are the damages that are awarded in medical malpractice cases for pain and suffering. And that cap was put on a number of years ago. It was modified during the medical malpractice crisis of 2004. But there was an issue with it in that it named certain licensed health occupations that were covered by the law. Um, PAs were not named in that law. Now, it's been argued that it's implied that they're covered, but we were able through this bill to go in and expressly get them added to the statute, which resolves any argument about that. And the scenario that used to arise and won't now that it's clear in the law was that if you had a bad outcome with a patient, the doctor would be subject to the cap, but the physician assistant with whom they had an agreement and were working with would not be covered. So that left a lot of exposure, and now we've got that addressed. This was a contentious issue with the trial lawyers a number of years ago when we had a bill specifically designed to fix this. They opposed it, but we were able to include it in this legislation while we had the opportunity.
And this was a really big win. I mean, I can't understate how big if essentially any physician who worked with a PA because of some other doctrines in tort, like joint and several liability, was at risk as a result of this, or any entity that hired a PA was at risk because of this. So this should lower those malpractice rates for anybody in that situation. And while the highest court in Maryland had never ruled, the intermediate appeals court had ruled upholding that it was not covered. So we had multiple physician members at MedChi who had had trouble with claims where this was an issue. So getting this done, the importance and value of this can just not be understated. It's great work.
Yeah, well, thank you. And we made clear from the start, and the PAs were together with us on
Hmm.
this. This wasn't the primary focus of their bill, but we said if we're going to be altering what a PA can do and potentially allowing more to be done by PAs, we've got to make sure we're all on equal footing under this non-economic damage cap.
Yeah, and they were agreeable on this one. This is one that we all liked, but it was just such a big win to get. And it's funny, there's been a lot of discussion about this bill, and I've seen, press events and things, but no one talks about this one, and this might be the most important piece of it. So
Right. Yeah.
it's a nice little added cherry on top, I guess. So anyway, well, if anyone has questions about the PA legislation or any other legislative item, they can go to www.medchi.org. In the legislative archives, we have a great report of everything that Schwartz Benson Wise worked on for MedChi that's available for you to look at. And you can look at our entire advocacy work and agenda there on the website. Thanks so much, Steve. Anything else?
That's it. I appreciate being with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.